So here's a group of happy people running. I don't know why they look happy, because they are running a race. It's called the Sri Chinmoy Self-Transcendence Race. This is a foot race that is 3,100 miles long. 3,100 miles long. Basically, what they do is they run 2 marathons during the day. They sleep for 5 hours and then do that again for 52 days in a row. During the course of this race, they will go through roughly 20 different pairs of shoes. It is like running from the West Coast to the East Coast and then running 11 marathons after that. This race is so insanely long and difficult on your body. There's only 43 people that have ever completed it in 22 years of the race's history. There's actually one guy who's completed it 14 times, running a pace of 77 miles a day. You may figure that he's a postman for his career. I guess that's what he's into. Now, here's the craziest thing about this race to me. All of that running, thousands of miles, is around a single block in New York City. Around it, again and again and again, they go around this one block 5,649 times. I don't understand why anybody do that. And you imagine sitting there watching them go around. Here it comes around again. What is the point? You're putting yourself through all of this. Why? Have you ever felt, by the way, like that is your life? Right? It's misery all day long. I'm circling the same block. I've only got 4,000 laps to go. When will this end? I want to go home. Open with me in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 37. Today we're going to cover the life story of Joseph. As we've gone through the patriarchs, so you have Abraham, his son Isaac, his son Jacob. Jacob has 12 kids. Today we'll cover Joseph. There's 2 ways to go through this. One, we can go like verse by verse and spend a great deal of time, but today I wanted to capture the entire narrative arc of the life of Joseph and make a few points from that. So we'll start at verse 2. So this is a phrase, by the way, you see this in Genesis, that introduces a new storyline. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Isn't that every sibling relationship ever? So he is the youngest of 12 brothers, and he's a tattletale. Starting to see that with our kids, the joy that one sibling has of knowing something that the other has done wrong, and aren't you going to get it? I'm going to go tell mom. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. Some of you saw growing up Joseph in a Technicolor dream coat. Now, you have this favoritism, and think of what we've seen, though, within this family. Generations of dysfunction brought on by favoritism between the kids. And it continues here. Joseph is the second youngest. Benjamin is the youngest. But Jacob just loves him more than any of the other kids. And just to get a sense of, most of you wouldn't feel jealous if your parents got a nice winter coat from one of your other siblings. But during that time, clothing was so expensive. Imagine your first car. Any of you drive a total beater for your first car? Like a Pinto or something like that? Yeah. So imagine you're driving that, right? And then your youngest sibling comes home, and surprise for their birthday, your parents got them a multicolored Mustang. You think that caused some tension in your family? Every time you're trying to start your car, and you look over and they're driving that thing down the road. So, verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Any of you ringing some bells for your family situations growing up? This is unsurprising, of course. And then, as the narrative develops, Jacob sends Joseph to go check on his brothers. They're out in the field. So again, if he's already brought a bad report, can imagine what the brothers feel as they see him approaching. Verse 18, they saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. Reuben, the oldest, convinces his brothers, no, we can't kill him. Let's not do that. But they see an opportunity. They've thrown him in a pit. I don't know what we're going to do with him, but man, is he going to bring something bad to Dad now that we've done this and talked about killing him. So we got to do something with him. They see some traders approaching. Midianite traders passed by. And they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. Now, you may have fantasized about this, like with your younger siblings growing up. Like, one day I'm just going to sell you, and Mom and Dad are going to come home, and I don't know what happened to them. And so they have to explain, of course, how Joseph went missing. So they take a goat and they kill it, and they cover his cloak with blood and tear it to pieces and bring it back to Jacob and say, oh, we found his cloak like this. Wild animals must have eaten him. This is ironic because if you remember, Jacob deceived his brother, and the life story for him is just continual deception by others. Just as Esau sold his inheritance, Jacob's sons sell their brother. The Midianites carry Joseph from the land of Canaan to the land of Egypt and sell him as a slave. Now this is just a theme throughout the book of Genesis. Here, generations of severe family dysfunction. So take heart. If that is the story of your family, again, we look here at the patriarchs of the nation of Israel and say these were very flawed people. I mean, these brothers who sold him into slavery, they go on. They are 11 of the 12 tribes of Israel. This continues the theme in Genesis that we are the problem. We left Eden. We brought sin into the perfect world that God created. And this is just working its way out, generation after generation of problems. Genesis 39. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his Egyptian master, a man by the name of Potiphar. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So Joseph's father Jacob had prayed as he left his homeland, God, if you will be with me, right? Bring me safely through my journeys. I'm running for my life from my brother. Bring me back here. And God was with him. Just as God had promised Abraham that he would bless him and his offspring, we see that working out even as a slave. Joseph works his way up in the household, and this was common in ancient times. Sometimes slaves, though being a slave and not paid for their work, could hold very high positions within households. But that's not the end of his troubles. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. Joseph refuses. He says, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. This is really telling for the character of Joseph. How do you handle your difficult times? You know what I've seen is that sometimes when we're stressed, when we're in a prolonged time of trial and hardship, and feeling beat down, that we become indulgent with ourselves. We turn to those sins or those areas of treat yourself, whether it be binge eating or watching porn or using meth, whatever it is, that so often for people it is when I am struggling, it is when life is hard, that I say, well, I deserve a little something. We can develop the mindset that godliness is for my good days. I'm tired today. Yet your character is shown on your worst days. I mean, Joseph had all the reason in the world at this point to say, you know what? I deserve something that I enjoy. But he refuses. He says, I will not sin against my master or against God. This continues day after day until she eventually accuses Joseph of rape. or attempted rape, and Joseph is thrown into prison, an innocent man. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. So Joseph is in prison unfairly. His life seems to be going from bad to worse. And what do we find him doing? Lamenting over his repeated betrayals? Saying, oh, woe is me, everything's terrible. Griping and complaining, filled with bitterness. No, Joseph is volunteering to mop the floors. Who does that? I mean, go visit a jail, right? Go find somebody who insists, I'm here, I shouldn't be here, don't deserve to be here, I didn't do anything wrong. And then go ask the warden, is that the person volunteering to clean up after everybody eats? Is that the person taking on extra responsibility? Let me ask you, are you determined to be faithful wherever you are? When you're somewhere unfair? I remember, man, if I got asked to cover an extra work shift and I was working at a restaurant, you cover a double shift and people are griping and complaining and there's that list of stuff that should be done at the end of the day. You know, the stuff that nobody does? Because when people develop the mindset of I'm being treated unfairly, well, I'm not going to do extra for them. I don't owe them anything. What's going to show your character? How you behave when you're treated unfairly. Also notice this repeated theme that God was with him. He was with him when he got sold into slavery. He was with him when he's thrown in prison. While there, God gives Joseph the ability to interpret dreams by his fellow prisoners. Two of them have dreams, they can't explain it. Joseph tells the cupbearer, says, hey, you know what this dream means? In 3 days, Pharaoh's going to take you out of prison. You're going to go back to your old job. And it happens, but the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Theme here of Joseph continually being ill-treated by others, yet God continues to be with him. 2 years pass. Can you imagine? I would be kind of ticked. Hey, I just gave you the best news of your life, and I just don't see him again. I'm waiting, right? Oh, I hear the cupbearer is back, Pharaoh's son. I'm waiting. Okay, any day now, he's gonna give me a hand. Any day now, my help's gonna come. Okay, maybe he's just adjusting to the first week, right? It's busy. Got a lot of wine to taste for Pharaoh. He's hungover maybe. Week 2. Week 3. 2 years go by. And at some point during these 2 years, I guarantee you, he just arrived at the conclusion, he's forgotten completely about me. I'm alone. Nobody knows I'm here. Nobody cares that I'm here. But God was with him. Pharaoh has a troubling dream. Nobody can interpret it for him. This was a common thing that they would have, professional on-staff dream interpreters. They can't tell him the meaning of his dream. And then the cupbearer is like, oh, I know a guy. Can't believe I forgot about him. And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and shaved his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. Joseph tells Pharaoh that God is telling him through this dream that there will be 7 abundant years and then 7 years of famine. Joseph says, hey, if we want to live through this, we need to store up the extra food from the good years to get us through the bad years. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there's none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. So now for the 3rd time, Joseph is put into a position of responsibility and authority. When the years of famine come, Joseph's brothers are forced to go to Egypt, hearing that there's food there. And there's this long, elaborate storyline of Joseph coming to terms with forgiveness with his brothers when they still don't know who he is. And he finally reaches that point, and he tells his brothers, "Hey, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. There in that moment, they realized Joseph, who we knew was like a slave somewhere, is now not only alive, but he's in a position of absolute authority. All those guards we passed on the way in are probably going to kill us now. We're going to die. Our brother Joseph is alive. Joseph tells them, "Now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. God sent me before you to preserve life." It goes on in more detail. "For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and Lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt." What an incredible statement. He says, God sent me into this. Not just like, "Oh, I barely made it through, guys. It was terrible. Everybody treated me awful, including you." Not in the sense that God sent me here. He's been trying to crush me for years. I don't know why. Some of us do when we go through trouble. No, he said, God is sovereign over my life's circumstances. So when he looked back at his life, he could say, "You betrayed me. The traitors sold me. Potiphar's wife accused me. Pharaoh raised me. But it is God who sent me here. It is God who controls every step of my life." So let me tell you today, if you're in a position of struggle or if you're in a position of success and fortune, it is God who has placed you where you are right now. Later on, there's this fear again when their father Jacob dies. The brothers, perhaps hearing from Jacob the story of how Esau was going to kill him after their dad died, they think, "Oh man, has Joseph just been waiting for now to take his vengeance on us?" So in Genesis 50 again, he has to reassure his brothers. But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." So it's not just that God sent me. God sent me for good. The very thing that you intended to destroy me, you taking your revenge on me, God took that and he used it for the good purposes that he had planned. Now I got to remind you, and I know I say this a lot, God defines good differently than you do. Don't we run into that a lot? Right? We go into a circumstance, we say, "You know what? If I got that promotion at work, it's really easy for me to see how that would be good for me." And we pray for it, and we say, "Hey, God, this is a good thing that I want." And God says, "No." And it's hard in that moment to say, "Oh, God, your plans are good." Because according to our understanding in the moment, it's hard, but God, that really would have helped out. See, what we can end up saying, though, when we do that, is to say, "God, I know what is good better than you do. God, I could plan this all better than you." I believe that at the last day, we will have understanding. When we look back on our life, and not just our lives, but the lives of many others, and say, "You know what, now I understand." The thing is, Joseph, in the middle of his struggle, he had no way of knowing. All he knew is like, "Hey, I'm a slave now. Out of my control. Can't see any good coming from that." He had no way of knowing about some future famine in this land that he's now a stranger in. That he would become vital to saving not just the lives of his own family, but countless others, Egyptians and the people from the surrounding countries, because famine was a deadly thing during that time in history. Joseph trusted God all the way through. At every step, not knowing a plan, not knowing where this is heading, he trusted God in the middle of it before he had a clue what God was going to do through it. So we tell you today, God has plans that you don't know about. Turn to your neighbor and say this. Say, God has plans I don't know about. So when you look at the book of Genesis, God had already set this up to happen generations before. Way back in Genesis 15, when God was making his covenant with Abraham, here's what he told him. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. And they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. God tells Abraham, hey, I'm going to give you this land, but I'm going to take your descendants away from it for 400 years. They would spend 400 years in Egypt. And he says, the reason that I'm doing that is the people who live here, the Amorites and the other tribes, their sinfulness is going to blossom. And so that at the time of the Exodus, when God brings the Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land, yes, it's fulfilling the promised land, but it's also a judgment on the tribes there. We know from archaeological evidence the crazy stuff that they were into as they worshiped their gods through like burning kids to death. So God allows the Amorites things to get worse and worse, and in his plans stretching over generations, he says, yes, I'm going to put the Israelites in Egypt while this happens, and when I bring them out, I'm going to judge these people here. Did Joseph really get his place in all that? Probably not. Even the part that he sees at the end of his life is really on the smaller scale. I just see the immediate effect that I got to save some people out of famine. Maybe not even having a full grasp of hundreds of years of God's intention for the nation of Israel, for the tribes in Canaan. And so the story of Joseph serves as a bridge account. Because in the book of Genesis, we've been following one family and their history. And so Joseph ends in the book of Genesis with his family and their kids. They all moved to Egypt. At least in the book of Exodus, where suddenly it is a nation of people after 400 years that are brought out of Egypt. And it is that nation of people that the book of Genesis is written to. So the message to them, the reason they're told this, is for them to see, you see, Joseph, this is your story. You were slaves. This is how you got there. This is the way that God worked all of this. This isn't just history, this is family history. I'll say the same thing to you. This is your story. Not just a history lesson or some moral fable. This is your heritage because we, through faith in Christ, are grafted into the promises given to Abraham. Any of you have one of those DNA tests? Tells you like your ethnic heritage. Anybody have like a surprise mixed in there? Something you didn't know about yourself? Man, I was thrown for a loop because like they had like the initial percentages and then they'll update it from time to time, send you an email like, hey, guess what? And one of them at one point, they told me I was 4% North African. Wow. And it was so wild because all of a sudden it changed the way that I looked at the history for people from that area of the world, from general like history stuff that happened to like, is this part of my story? Does it have a connection to me? So what do we do with this? I want you to realize that in your struggle, though you may feel like it, you are not like those poor souls running 3,000 miles around a single block in New York City. Because you know what? They're going to end that race right where they began. They will have gotten nowhere. Instead, there's another famous, I wouldn't call it a race, but the inspiration for the marathon. Perhaps you've heard the story. There was a battle at a place called Marathon. And as the Athenians left for battle, they sent a messenger named Philippides to get help from the other city-state of Sparta. And Philippides was a hemerodramas, meaning literally in Greek, a day runner, somebody who prepared themselves to run for an entire day. Because at that point in history, messengers were the breaking point, the dividing line between a battle that went well and a battle that went poorly. And so these people, they viewed it as their sacred task to prepare themselves. When you need a messenger, I'm your guy. So he runs from Athens to Sparta to get help, and then back. It's 150 miles. 6 times the length of a marathon to bring this vital message. Now, what's the difference between this guy and those slowly circling a block in New York City? They go through the same hardships. I mean, none of you have ever run 150 miles straight, I don't think. We can assume there's hardships, same difficulties, pain, and exhaustion. The difference is purpose. You know why he's running? The fate of our nation rests on me. I'm not just running aimlessly or for fun, which I really don't understand. I am running because I am a part of what is happening at this battle. I'm not fighting the battle myself, but I'm a part of it. So my pain, my discomfort, my exhaustion, there is a purpose that is being brought about through all of this. That's what Joseph came to see about his life. So I went through some stuff, yeah. But what God brought about through that, it's worth it. So he says to his brothers, don't even be mad with yourselves. I'm okay with what God chose to bring about through my suffering. Because sometimes it's hard, right? Like if you're suffering for the gospel, you know, you get made fun of for talking about Jesus at work or something like that. It's easier for us to say, okay, there's like a purpose to that. But it's hard to say like, oh, I've got back pain. How does that glorify God, right? How can I lose my job to the glory of God? Be falsely accused for the glory of God? Romans chapter 5, verse 1 says this. Therefore, since we've been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Through him we've also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope of the glory of God. So because I've been made right with God through Jesus, I'm filled with hope because God is for me. And then it goes on to say, God is always, because of this, God is always at work in my struggles. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings because there's purpose here. Knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. So I know that my life, God has plans I don't know about. And so I trust him in the circumstances he puts me into. He knows what he's doing. I also know that when I suffer, what God is going to do is use that suffering to produce in me godly character. How many of you can testify that God has grown your character through a difficult time? Maybe more of us then can testify that God has changed our character through the easy times. God uses every bit of it. And so over time, people who've been walking with God, you learn to anticipate this, to even want it in a way. Not that any of us is like, oh God, give me more trials. But as I head into the trial, there's a part of me that's learned to say, wow, God, you're going to do something awesome with this. Not that we like pain or suffering, but we can learn to associate the growth that's going to come through this. Because I know this suffering will produce endurance. And that's the truth. If you're going to run for 3,000 miles, you need to build up your endurance to get to that point. Those Hemerodramas, guys who train to run all day, they willingly put themselves through pain and suffering, knowing that they needed to build up that endurance and that character, because you got to learn to keep running after you hit the wall, after your body's saying, hey, you really need to stop now. To say, no, I'm going to keep running because I need to. There's only one way to build that. And it's through pain. There's one thing that lifting weights has taught me. It's all pain. Right? Some of you have already given up on the gym this year. You go there and you lift weights and it hurts while you lift, and then your body is sore the next day. It's all pain. But I know that pain is going to produce a chemical cascade that's going to rebuild the muscles stronger for next time. So I embrace it. That God would give me the same attitude towards the trials in my life. So I don't know what you're facing today. You know, maybe you feel like you're 2 laps in the Chidmoy self-transcendence race, and you already want to call it quits and go home. I remember as a young kid, I made the mistake of going and watching my mom run a marathon, which is great if you're at mile marker 3. Go Mom! Hey kids! By mile marker 20, do not show up. If you ever have a friend run a marathon, don't show up at the end. See them at the beginning, see them at the finish line, because mile marker 20, right, which for some reason is always like uphill. It's like, I hate this. I hate everything, and I hate you for making me do this. Why am I doing this? Maybe you're there today. And I just tell you that you're not running for no reason. God knows what he's doing in your life. So don't lose heart. Let's pray. God, I pray that you would give us eyes to see as Joseph did. That you are good in everything that you do. Though we may not see it at the time, though we certainly won't enjoy it, that we would trust you with our trials. That you are working what other people intended for evil against me, God. You're going to use that for the good of your kingdom. Even when I feel like I've failed you, God, that your purposes are unchanged. That what you're going to do is you're going to grow godly character in us through the hard times. That we can say this with confidence because of the victory that Jesus has already won.